Welcome to the Committee for Oklahoma Prosperity podcast with Mike Mazie, CEO of Trinity Strategic Wealth, former state senator, and Oklahoma Secretary of Finance. Mike talks with public policy and industry leaders about needed transformative changes to make Oklahoma a top 10 state for people to live, work, and retire. The Committee for Oklahoma Prosperity is advancing ideas and policy that create growth and prosperity for the people of Oklahoma.
I'm so delighted to be with our friend, Secretary of Transportation Tim Gatz today as we start some podcasts for the Committee for Oklahoma Prosperity. Tim Gatz has been a stalwart public servant for years and years and the leading expert on roads and bridges as he serves multiple roles for the governor's cabinet and the Department of Transportation. I think the role that he enjoys most, however, is Grandpa. So let's kick off Grandpa Gatz with the highlight of Christmas and New Year's for the Gatz family.
Mike, and thank you so much for the invitation. Really happy to be a part of this and talk about transportation, one of my favorite subjects. You know, on the family side, you could not be more correct. You know, the grandkids are all doing great. We had some good family time over the course of the holiday season. And as always, we've got a new addition to the family that everybody's excited about. A new grandson got here on January the 3rd, and
Wow.
Mother and baby are doing awesome. Zealand Matthew. So we are extremely excited to add him to the family group. And again, we enjoyed some tremendous holidays. Hopefully you and your family did also.
I had all five of my kids, Tim, at home for a little while under my roof. So it was a blessed season as we got to spend some time together and worship the Lord at church together, which, you know, doesn't really happen much when they all grow up. So that was a special treat for me.
Yes, sir.
And I love the fact that we're going to talk about roads and bridges today because the number one goal, the number one priority of the Committee for Oklahoma Prosperity is jobs, 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 and more jobs. And as you've taught me over the years, you can't do that without the right type of infrastructure and the right type of maintaining the infrastructure. So why are roads and bridges so critical to the economic growth of the state of Oklahoma, Secretary Gatz?
You know, there is nothing in Oklahoma that touches our citizenry every day more than our transportation system. It's utilized in every aspect of our daily lives. You know, whether that is transporting us to perform our duties at work, whether that is getting our kids to school, and certainly supports our business and industry. And having a quality transportation system is fundamental to economic development. Again, without that network, without that travel time reliability, and I'll put an exclamation point on that from a business standpoint, we have to be able to move people, goods, and services effectively to attract business and support business here in the state of Oklahoma. And again, our efforts to provide a quality, safe transportation system is, you know, always an ongoing effort. We don't suffer from a lack of job security because our mission is never ending. So again, but you know, at the very lowest level, Mike, the transportation system is a critical part of the fabric of Oklahoma, whether that's in the urban areas and managing not just conditional issues of our roads and bridges, but congestion. And congestion equates to quality of life. And Oklahoma has done an exceptional job to this point of staying ahead of that. And, you look beyond our southern border at some of our friends in Texas and the commute times and the things that they suffer with. Oklahoma has done a good job of staying ahead of that. Our population growth continues to ramp up. So the demands on our system have got to keep pace, for the future. So.
And you've got an amazing team all over the state, and we're grateful for your efforts and their efforts. One of the side effects of all this great progress that is finally happening, and we'll get back in a little bit to how all this progress, was engineered after years of lack of attention, but with road work happening all over the state in so many different areas, we impatient Americans, Mr. Secretary, we impatient Oklahomans, we want it to all get fixed yesterday. And we can all kind of relate to, gee, I'm traveling down this road again and they're still not finished. And, sometimes that frustration sets in with all the road work, which is a little bit understandable. So for, all of us that are looking at the red cones and trying to be respectful of the workers, what should our expectations be when we see a critical project get rolling? Like, say, here in Tulsa, it took a lot of months for that US 75 and I-44 new interchange work to get handled. What should our time expectations be from start to finish on these major projects?
When you're looking at an interchange like that, that's really a system to system interchange. Mm-hmm. And that particular location is one of the highest traffic volume locations that we have in the state of Oklahoma. So you're mixing a lot of traffic. That interchange worked really good in its former form when it was out in the middle of a pasture. And as originally constructed, that's exactly what it was. The section of I-44 through that area there just west of the Arkansas River was the oldest section of interstate that we had in the state of Oklahoma.
Wow.
So again, it served us well, but long past its life expectancy, long past its traffic carrying capabilities. And I would consider that to be a major, major investment in Oklahoma's future and the interchange work that's going on there now. From a expectations and timing standpoint, mm-hmm. You've got the critical path for transportation is a very simple factor of resources. And when the Department of Transportation undertakes a project like that, and to put that in perspective, that's going to be a $400 million investment by the time we get done with it.
Wow.
The Department of Transportation can't eat that elephant all at once in an investment like that, so we have to phase construct those projects. What you see out there right now is we're about 2 phases into it. One of the things that we're doing right now is working to compile a couple of phases together. So we'll let a project late summer on that particular interchange that will finish a lot of it. And what you see out there right now, commonly referred to as the kind of the ODOT Stonehenge, if you would.
The tower.
Yeah, and there is logic behind that, because what that did was that minimized some of the disruption to traffic for some of the next phases. But we're assembling right.
The spaceship was going to come down and land on top of them and all connect at some point, Tim.
Yeah, understood. But there, like I said, there is method behind that madness, and it will minimize some of the traffic disruption for the future. We'll start that next project. It'll be a good 2.5 years long, but it'll finish some of those flyovers. It extends to the south all the way back to about 61st Street. Wow. So it really takes care of 75 and some of the problems we've got there. So you're going to see major progress in that interchange to the tune of about $200 million worth of work in the next project that we let later in the summer. So again, a couple of years after that, and more than anything else, I want to thank the traveling public for their patience with us while we implement some of these improvements. And Tulsa is really been good to work with. The public is always attentive, and we, again, thank them for their patience, but ask them to bear with us.
Indeed. One of the reasons I wanted to start this podcast series, Tim, on roads and bridges is I always use it as an example when I'm out in public sometimes with speeches or presentations as a great testament to the people of Oklahoma fixing something when we put our minds to it. When I went into the state Senate in 2004, there had been this 20 or 30 year period of inattention to our roads and bridges infrastructure across the state. And, not just me, but a whole lot of people and resources, the executive branch, the legislative branch, industry, all got together and said, how do we make this a priority? And that, of course, turned into the program that a lot of people refer to as roads, but they don't really remember, I think, or some people down at the Capitol today don't know how we got to this point of super massive progress. So why don't you describe for us how bad the situation had become and how the roads funding program helped us turn the corner and finally started playing some catch up on roads and bridges across the state?
Mike, that's a great question. And you certainly, during your tenure in the legislature, you were witness to a phenomenal transition. And it's nothing less than that. And I'll put that in perspective a little bit. You remember when a barge knocked down the Arkansas River Bridge on I-40. That resulted in not only an absolutely tragic loss of life, but it severed a primary artery, not just for transportation in Oklahoma, but for transportation in the nation. Mm-hmm. We had to divert that interstate traffic onto a state highway system that was woefully ill-equipped to be able to handle that truck volume, to be able to handle the passenger vehicles, et cetera. And I think that galvanized the resolve of the Department of Transportation to make sure that there was a clear understanding in the legislature and among Oklahoma citizenry of the condition that our transportation asset was in. And the transportation network in Oklahoma is the largest publicly owned asset, and it's got a replacement value of about $70 billion. Wow. So, we went to work, certainly trying to make sure the legislature had the right information available to them to help make good, informed decisions about what our investment strategy ought to be. I'll tell you without hesitation, during the time, and when that I-40 bridge was down, the detour for it was an 89-mile detour. Oh. Across that 89 miles, we were out in the middle of the night with our crews trying to keep those bridges in the air. And literally, you could stick your arm through some of the bridge beams because they had so much rust and section loss. So we're out in the middle of the night trying to keep that detour operational. And again, that really hit us between the eyes as far as the need to get out there and get something done. That led to that transformation that started really in about 2004, carried on through the development and delivery of the roads fund. And that was where it all started. At that particular moment in time, I'll turn the clock back to 2006. The state of Oklahoma was 49th in the country in structurally deficient bridges on the highways. That's not an enviable position. And certainly we needed to do something about that. Diligence, commitment, and support of legislators and legislators and subsequent legislators, across that 20-year time window has been the key, and to consider what we've done in the 8-year plan was a big part of that, and really having a focus. We have made a incredible journey on our bridge infrastructure, going from 49th in the country to number 5 or number 6 in the country right now.
That's terrific. For
best bridges, 1,200 structurally deficient bridges in 2006, roughly. Today, we've got about 47, to really put that in perspective. Those bridges support our safe passage and support commerce. So again, we've come a long ways since 2004. The roads fund has been a key factor in that, and maintaining that revenue stream consistently over the long term has been really exceptionally important. And not just, the roads fund didn't just come into being. It has increased in funding level, which again, that's helped us keep pace with everything from inflation to just the demands out there on the system. But it all started
now up to $590 million a year.
$590 million is what it is today. It started out with a very simple commitment of $15 million.
Now, so we've achieved top 10 status in structurally deficient bridges, which is amazing. You've kind of taught me as a city guy, a Tulsa guy, that one of the critical priorities also to now put some dedication and focus on is the need for shoulders on our rural roads. I think sometimes you use this phrase rural twos or something I'm not quite remembering. Why are getting shoulders on our rural highways, state roads so critical for the people of Oklahoma?
Mike, if you look at Oklahoma's highway system, and if you put a tape measure down and measured it down the yellow stripe, we've got about 12,300 miles.
Wow.
Of that 12,300 miles, about 5,300 of it, as we sit here today, are narrow rural 2-lane highways that don't have a safety shoulder on them.
Okay.
Why is that a concern? Well, we've all traveled on some of those highways, and what happens too often is an edge drop off just outside that white line on the pavement develops over time, and a driver will drop the wheel off that low edge, overcorrect, and causing sometimes a rollover accident, more horrifically, sometimes a head-on collision in oncoming traffic, or a roadway departure to the right or to the left. So we have the highest fatality rate, the highest severity rate for accidents on those very rural 2-lane highways. And, we've got an initiative, much like we did with our bridge infrastructure, to focus our investments on putting safety shoulders, paved safety shoulders of at least 4 foot width, more importantly, 8 or 10 feet width, to support the safe passage on those highways. And again, that's become a real safety factor for us. It's a problem across the state of Oklahoma. We've got, of that 5,300 miles, we've got about 1,100 miles of it in the 8-year construction work plan scheduled to have shoulders put on it. And again, that is a very important facet, and especially in rural Oklahoma. Those highways support our safe passage by our citizenry, but also They support our business and industry. Oklahoma is still an agricultural state. We have a big part of our economy is agricultural based. We're an energy state, and we will be. And those highways support that commerce out there. So it's important for us to make those investments, much the same as it's important for us to take care of major interchange infrastructure in our urban areas. So it's always that balance.
Gotcha. You're a perfect guest because you already created this nice segue to the 8-year plan. As a small business owner myself, a strategic planner, if you will, I understand the importance of you got to have resources, and then you got to have strategic thinking behind it to maximize your forward progress. And the 8-year plan, as it's known in the parlance of the state capitol, versus the more accurate terminology you just used. Why don't you describe for us the importance of the 8-year plan and whether or not this current funding level, Mr. Secretary, of $590 million is actually going to keep pace with the needs going forward? Because if I recall correctly, you've mentioned to me, recently that costs because of inflation across the country have gone up 30%.
That's accurate. And again, talk a little bit about the 8-year plan first. And I'm one of the old guys, Mike. I've been around for, with the Department of Transportation.
We're not old yet. We're not old yet. We're veteran, wise sages.
Understood.
We'll be old for another 20 years. We can't admit to that just yet.
Well, so I've got a good historical perspective of the department, and I was here before we had an 8-year plan. What that resulted in is a lot of rework, a lot of commitments that were not fiscally responsible, if you would. And we were making promises that we knew we couldn't deliver on. We didn't have the resources available to do it. The 8-year plan, and I want to credit right here to Gary Ridley, who was the Secretary of Transportation, the director of Department of Transportation at the time.
I learned a lot from him when I first came into the Senate.
Yes, sir. And he was the one that really brought the focus to that problem. And he was responsible for us sitting down at the table and putting together a fiscally constrained resource plan to meet the needs of the state, not exactly the way the department would like to, because we'd like to do things a whole lot faster. But we took the resources that we had available at the state level and the federal level and really directed those dollars to the engineering-based needs that we had identified across the state of Oklahoma. And, that was a dramatic shift. When the 8-year plan came into being, it took politics out of that investment strategy.
Right.
And again, became engineering based. That plan's our guidebook. If you can imagine, we tell you not what we're going to try to do with the transportation system just across the course of the next year. We try to project that 8 years out.
Okay.
So that's that managed plan. That's our investment strategy. That's our communication with both the legislature and the public on what we're trying to accomplish. And it's really helped us tremendously as a communication tool.
Yeah, so, reading those 8-year plan booklets that you've handed out over the years was sometimes overwhelming, but also pretty encouraging because this is a real well thought out schedule, and it's made a world of difference for the state. As we think longer term, the world is changing, and we've got gasoline powered vehicles, and we've got electric vehicles, and we've got hybrid vehicles, and we've got tax receipts that come from filling up at the gas station, but we got electric vehicles that don't fill up at the gas station, but might become, more and more prevalent. So how should legislators and, the governor in the next 8 years, if you will, be looking at these changing dynamics? And maybe you might want to use this opportunity to explain the pilot program that's, I think, going on right now, that our mutual friend, state senator and transportation secretary, our transportation committee chairman, John Haste, has been discussing sometimes with the public.
And that's really the concept of investment revenue generation for transportation infrastructure investment has been really based heavily on motor fuel tax revenue.
Right.
And, that's the motor fuel tax in Oklahoma on a gallon of gas and a gallon of diesel is 20 cents.
Okay.
We're one of the lowest in the nation. I think we're about 45th in the country, lowest motor fuel tax. That's a good thing. That speaks well for Oklahoma. We've met some of our transportation needs with a user fee, which comes in the form of our turnpike network. That's helped us keep those motor fuel taxes down. But that 20 cents is it's not indexed to anything. So when a gallon of gas is $2.50, we collect 20 cents a gallon for fuel tax. If that gallon of gas goes to $5, that same 20 cents is collected. So it's not indexed. It doesn't grow.
Okay.
But it's been a very solid revenue stream for about 100 years. There are very few taxes in the United States that have served that purpose during a 100-year period. The motor fuel tax concept came into being in the early 1900s, and it served the public well because it's been a growth revenue stream. More miles traveled, more gallons of gas used, so you had a growing revenue stream until just about the current time. Just over the last few years, we begin to see those motor fuel tax revenues start to flatten. The federal motor fuel tax is certainly one that we're watching closely. But those revenues are beginning to flatten. And what's driving that is, to some extent, electric vehicles. Not to a great extent, though. What really drives that is fuel efficiencies. And, the CAFE standard, the fuel efficiency standards that are being set at a much higher level today than they've ever been before. So even though in Oklahoma, our vehicle miles traveled, so the miles that are driven across our transportation system every day, continue to grow, our motor fuel tax revenues are flattening. And that we have to be paying attention to that. The state of Oklahoma, and for that matter, the United States, is going to have to really get a handle on this and make some decisions about how we want to generate revenue to be invested into our transportation system. And, the transition is really what Fair Miles, our pilot program, is all about. The legislature gave us some statutory instruction to say, hey, you guys go take a look at this. Come back with some ideas, come back with some recommendations. So we did the pilot. We had somewhere between 250 and 400 participants at any given time in that pilot study. About 1 million miles traveled across the state of Oklahoma. The pilot's complete. We delivered our report to the legislature at the end of December.
Okay.
And, it's got some good information in it and some recommendations. It's intended to spur some thought process, not to be a prescriptive guidebook.
I see.
Because again, there's a lot of things the legislature is going to have to take a look at and consider. And, but at the same time, the important thing is to recognize that in the face of inflation, and Mike, you talked about it, heavy highway industry across the course of the last 4 years has experienced inflationary pressures of about 63%.
Holy cow.
So if you don't believe that that's a significant erosion of our buying power, it's had an effect on us. And our revenue streams are just not indexed to anything. So they don't grow to help really manage that inflationary pressure. If you project that inflationary pressure on motor fuel tax collections through 2050, we're going to see about a 50% reduction in buying power, assuming a much more normal 3% a year inflationary trend. So those are things that are going to affect us, and we have to. The solutions will come over time, but right now is the right time to be talking about it and starting to craft some of those solutions.
Well, we're lucky to have your leadership, and I know Senator John Hayes, my friend in the Senate, is taking all that very seriously. We're just touching on the real part of the winter season here, and I know how personally you take seriously the winter and road crews and preparations across the state, and you're out there sometimes checking on everything, personally. What's the most important advice you could have for all of us travelers here as we enter into the winter season, and we're definitely going to have some snow and ice events like we had yesterday?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we just experienced some really unpredictable inclement weather over the last couple of days where, it's kind of, and it's that black ice as always. I tell people all the time, I'd rather have 10 inches of snow because we can manage that much easier than we can black ice, because you just don't ever know where that's going to form.
Yeah.
So, the number one advice that I have is stay home if you can.
Okay.
During inclement weather. If you can't, you've got to get out. Please slow down. Those black and white speed limit signs are for a clear, bright day. You have to adjust for the conditions that you're encountering. So have some patience, slow down a little bit, pay attention to your surroundings. Have your wintertime kit in your vehicle. That's going to be maybe an extra cell phone battery, maybe some blankets, some water, some snacks. You want to have that in your vehicle just in case. And it may not be you caught in a snowdrift. It might be that you get caught in a traffic backup that's been caused by an accident somewhere up the road. Okay. So be cognizant of that. And then, Mike, you've heard me say so many times, please buckle your seatbelt.
Yep.
And, Oklahoma's not very good at it. We've got a low seatbelt usage rate, and you're about 50% more likely to be severely injured or unfortunately become a fatality in an accident if your seatbelt is not buckled. So always yourself as a driver, make sure your passengers are buckled in, and just slow down, pay attention, put away distractions, and be careful out there.
Absolutely. I think at staff meeting for my company on Monday, we'll tell everyone about the winter kit, and we'll give everybody some guidance. We so appreciate your dedication, Secretary Gatz, to the people of Oklahoma. We're grateful that you spent some time with us today. We wish you a tremendous 2024, and thanks for all your tremendous hard work and public service. We appreciate it greatly. Have a blessed day.
Mike, thank you so much for the opportunity, and God bless you. We appreciate everything that you're doing for us, and always a pleasure, my friend.
The Committee for Oklahoma Prosperity is advancing ideas and policy that create growth and prosperity for the people of Oklahoma.